The Fantasmagorium is proud to present Ghouls, Ghosts, and Goblins. Largely regarded as the studio that began Hollywood's love affair with the horror genre, Universal Pictures produced the films of the first movie Monsters. Tonight's film takes us down the Amazon in search of fossils, but will ultimately have us crash into the creature from the Black Lagoon. My name is Scotty R37. Kat is here, and Steve is waiting 10 feet under the water's surface to avoid the bends. How are you doing, Kat?
Good.
That's good. This is going to be a strange one for me because I don't know if I can muster up a whole heck of a lot to talk about with this one. How did it impact you? Is this your first time seeing it?
No, it's my third time seeing it.
Okay. And how has it grown or settled with you over those viewings?
I think this is actually a pretty good one because it jumps right into the story. It's like a fun little adventure flick out in the jungle with multiple encounters with the creature. And yeah, I think it's a fun movie.
I think it's fun, but whereas with the other movies, the other Universal horror movies that we've watched, there's been sort of a central performance to hang your hat on, for lack of a better term. And this one, while the Gill Man and the costume itself is rather impressive, and I do enjoy the technical construction of that outfit, there's not a whole heck of here to pay attention to except maybe Kay and the captain. Everyone else is just sort of, I don't know, generic in my mind.
Well, all of the leading guys in movies like this are really generic. You know, this falls into the category of the B monster movie where you have like the damsel in distress and you have the competing suitors, whatever, like we had with Phantom of the Opera, 1943, and that kind of stuff. But this is actually one of the most popular of the Universal creatures because it kept popping up in other things rather than its own series. It had 3 movies to its franchise, each coming out 1 year after the other. But that's the fewest of any movies of the Universal franchises, of the Universal monster movie franchises. Like all the other monsters appeared in more movies than the creature did, which is surprising, considering it was popular. It was actually designed by Millicent Parker from Disney, actually, but she did not get credit for it during her lifetime.
Oh.
I don't know why the studio downplayed that, but they did. Or Millicent Patrick, not Parker. And then, makeup artist Bud Westmore got most of the credit. The story, how it came about, was interesting. This producer, William Allen, was at a dinner party during the filming of Citizen Kane, and he was speaking with this Mexican cinematographer, Gabriel Figueroa, and he was telling him about the actual myth of the Yakaruna, which is like the, half man, half fish people of the Amazon that live in these underwater cities that are like upside down human cities, and how they transform themselves into humans to lure people into the depths and take them down and turn them into fish people and stuff like that. And it's like, okay. And he thought this story was interesting enough that 10 years later, he remembered enough of it to jot down story notes. And then in December 1952, they actually started sketching out a script with using the French Beauty and the Beast as sort of a springboard for the story. And they actually filmed this not just on the Universal backlot, but also in Waukeula Springs, Florida, where actual prehistoric fossils have been found. And you can tell that's all, Florida with the swamps and, everything like that, and the supposed Black Lagoon. And, they had 2 actors playing the creature. They had Ben Chapman for all the surface scenes, and they had Rico Browning for the underwater stuff. And Rico directed all the underwater sequences in Thunderball. And he said he could hold his breath underwater for 4 minutes if he's just, because the creature does a lot of like stalking of the characters and kind of hiding in the reeds under the water. But he's like, yeah, if you move around too much in the water, that cuts your air down to about 2 minutes, which I thought was interesting. And he actually played the creature for all the underwater scenes in all 3 films in the trilogy: Creature from Black Lagoon, Revenge of the Creature, and Creature Walks Among Us. But they had different actors playing the surface creature for the 3 films. But Ben Chapman was said to be a pretty cool guy who would actually carry around like a case which had 8x10, so that if anybody recognized him, he would just pull out the 8x10 and sign an autograph for him with a pen. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, from what I understand, this is the director and many of the cast members were very appreciative of the fandom for Creature of the Black Lagoon, just because it was the veracity of the fans that sort of kept it alive, whereas they thought it was just going to be something that was another dismissible horror movie or monster movie for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, the costume was also really impressive for its day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was surprisingly expressive. Like, it didn't just look so much like a man in a rubber suit. And strangely, at the time the film was released, Universal tried to downplay the fact that it was a guy in a suit, preferring that people think it's like a puppet or something like that, because they wanted to create the allure of, ooh, what is the creature? You know, like when you hear an actor play a role that they never want to reveal the actor's name because they think it's going to rob the mystique. Like, for the longest time in all the Scream movies, none of the actors would be told who was voicing Ghostface because they thought it just made it more ominous. So that way, when they heard his voice on, set for the first time, and they did something similar here, but they didn't want to tell anybody about it. And Chapman, who wore the suit, said he'd be in costume 14 hours a day, couldn't sit down, so he would just go into the back lot at the Universal Lake and just kind of float around in there. And then he was so hot, and the vision in the suit was terrible. He couldn't see shit, and he actually cut Julia Adams' head when he was in one of the shots where he's carrying her into the cave because he can't see where he's going. And I think if you look closely in the cave, in the far background in one of the shots between one of the crevices and beyond, it looks almost like a statue of a mermaid. And then behind another crevice, it looks like you're seeing these columns or something, almost like it's supposed to be the ruins of the underwater Amazonian city. And I really do like the beginning of the movie, too, where they actually come upon the fossils and you have the campsite and all that, but that was really cool.
Oh, definitely. Like, in terms of I suppose my interpretation of it is just that it is so very straightforward.
Yeah.
I do appreciate the tone, the dread of not knowing what's going to, or when Gilman is going to show up, or when he's going to strike. The underwater sequences are breathtaking, and they did remind me a lot of Thunderball. I don't know why. I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of this is going to take place underwater. And then I was like, you're an idiot, Scott. It's called the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Of course we're going to be underwater. And the performances are charming, but it is just sort of, we find, scientist finds fossil, recruits an expedition, goes back. They journey forth from where they find the fossil, head to the Black Lagoon, which has its own sort of reputation for not releasing its explorers back into the world. And then they fight with the Gill Man as it slowly picks off members of the expedition. And much like every other Universal horror movie, once the monster is defeated, the movie is done. There is no denouement. There is no sort of wind down. It's like, all right, well, that's done. So, but very entertaining. And again, a brisk pace. It's only an hour and 18. And apparently it was the first movie that Stephen King recalls seeing. And of all people, Ingmar Bergman watched this movie after its release every year on his birthday. So it was his favorite film, which I find something that was surprising. I wouldn't have expected that.
Wow, for me, I definitely would not have expected that from Ingmar Bergman. I got this whole massive. This is by far the biggest, heaviest box set I have. It's gonna knock everything over, but it's worth it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your sacrifice.
This thing it's oh god, it's a beast.
You need a forklift.
Oh
wow.
So it's got a book in here because it's designed almost like it's its own film festival, and rather than arranging the films in chronological order, they arrange them in like thematically. Like, oh, day 1 of the festival, here's your films for this, and day 2 is this, and they have like multiple films on the same disc because they break up the disc the same way. So it's a really fascinating thing where you could read along with all these commentaries by essays by film historians or whatever to go along with whatever disc you're watching to sort of like curating your own film festival. So it's like really interesting. So that's really surprising to hear that Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of his favorite films. I never.
That is, yeah, that is according to IMDb trivia. So pinch of salt.
Yeah, but I like also in this movie that even though the creature is always listed as being the antagonist, he's actually not. Like, the people are the antagonists because it only kills the workers because when they thought they saw the creature, they started firing at it or whatever, and so it comes back later to the camp to kill them. And just like when the scientists come upon them, they're trying to catch him and they realize he's real, like Mark, the doctor, is obsessed with find of the century and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, if you keep going out of your way to antagonize the creature, which is just stalking Kay because he thinks she's beautiful, kind of like King Kong, I guess, in another sense. Mm-hmm. So he's not really a villain, and going along with the inspiration of the Yakaruna, where they want to find like a wife or a husband or whoever and take them down into their underwater cities to turn them into him, which of course inspired the protagonist from The Shape of Water, who is revealed at the end of the movie to have gills like you're one of the gill people too, but you haven't fully transformed yet. So the movie does have a very far-reaching influence, and of course everybody knows The Shape of Water. Guillermo del Toro did win Best Picture.
Yes.
And that was a neat unofficial sequel in a way, kind of like a spin-off.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, so I like that there's also friction with the characters on the boat. There's a lot of like the captain's at odds with Mark, and David is like, oh, we're just going to collect the fossils. We're not equipped to deal with this. And Mark's just going crazy, like, we have to catch it. We have all this kind of stuff, and how the creature's so obsessed with getting Kay that it actually creates a barricade so they can't leave the lagoon. And even though it's supposed to be, the Black Lagoon is more like not meant literally, but like you said, the nickname, because people who go venturing there never return. So it's like a classic B monster movie, but I guess the reason it stood out for people was that costume was just so cool, and it does kind of jump right into the action. And it does have quite a few sequences of like the monster attacking and stuff compared to other movies that we've watched in this Universal series. So you do actually get a lot of creature action, and it doesn't have a particularly slow pace necessarily. It's like it's paced decently enough, but because the bulk of it is out in the jungles and you're out like having fun the whole time, it's like you said, it doesn't really have a denouement to it. But then again, other monster movies are that way too, where the monster dies and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
As we saw with The Invisible Man or with Frankenstein. Here, it's just kind of, okay, it has a bit of a Mickey Rooney, let's go make a movie type of feel to it. Because, yeah, I can recognize the stuff that they shot on the backlot. I've been to that lake on the backlot because you pass it on the backlot tram tour, so that's pretty cool to see.
That is cool.
And when I was last at Universal Studios, June 13th, 2013, they had a special effects show in a warehouse where they had a full-size, they had a replica of the Rita, the boat that they took out there, the steamer, and it's neat to see what it actually looks like in color and how much more, how the details pop so much more in color when you see it in person rather than, in black and white. And it's kind of a shame that this one isn't black and white, because it just seems like a movie that's begging to be in color, so you could see, you see the pictures of Wakula Springs, it looks gorgeous. Whereas here it kind of looks, the black and whiteness of it. It wouldn't be a big deal if it took place in the city or say in the English countryside, but here I just wish you could really get the color out of it.
Yeah, it would have been, but again, I think that adds to the sense of dread for it, because I still enjoy black and white movies. Like I think that the colors would pop, but then I do like it, especially when you do get into the Black Lagoon, like beneath the water, and you see our heroes, Mark and Dave, swimming around, and it does feel like the inky blackness beneath the water is a little bit scarier. And so I guess that same effect could have been done with color, but I did appreciate the black and white. But this was released in 3D originally as well.
Yes, and there is the 3D version is on the Blu-ray as well. You could choose between that or 2D. And I've read some reviews of this movie where people are like, "Oh, it doesn't work very well because you could tell it's designed for 3D." But it's like it didn't feel like it was designed for 3D. Watching the 2D version, it seemed fine to me. I Like, I mean, yeah, you could see how 3D might be cool, usually with the the shot of the claws coming forward and things like that.
Right.
And the music was certainly interesting, particularly the underwater music was just all over the place. Like, it didn't exactly build a sense of dread when you know the creature is out there spying on them or something. So I didn't really care for the music as this. I think they could have done a bit of a better job. The soundtrack I thought was pretty forgettable.
Well, they did have like they kept reusing that one jump scare sting anytime the creature shows up.
Hmm.
And I thought that was a little, it's like, okay, guys, reel it in a little.
Yeah.
But it wasn't it aside from that, maybe overusage. I didn't find the music to be too intrusive.
Mhm.
Uh didn't mind it. But and going back to the 3D, in a lot of those 50s horror or science fiction 3D movies, you get a lot of this going
Yeah.
on. And there were a couple of those, like swimming towards camera or throwing something at the camera, but it never really took me out of it. Um,
Yeah.
I think that it was just with the prosthetic or the suit. I liked how the gills expanded and contracted, and I liked how the creature is sort of doing when you see a fish closing and opening its mouth. Nice little touches that made it seem more organic than just a rubber suit.
Yeah. Yeah, because then when the mouth opens and closes, you even see the tongue and the inner gills functioning. So it was a really advanced design
Yeah.
for 1954. Oh, and we have a comment here. Hello, anti-derivative Jill.
Hey,
She
Jill.
says, "Hi, this movie is a joy for me. I did like that the monster fell in love. Yeah, it's like it's love at first sight for the creature because that's why he follows the boat. He sees her on deck, and so he starts. Well, at first he sees her when she's standing on the shore. Well, in a sense, it's almost like he doesn't see her. It's like I thought it was funny that his hand is reaching out to grab her. They call her and she walks away, and it's like the creature knows she's not there. It's like, well, it doesn't have eyeballs on its hands, but it's like it knows she's not there, so it just pulls back underneath. So that was
Recedes.
funny. But again, I did like the idea also that they specifically picked Wakula Springs because hey, actual prehistoric finds from that era, the Devonian era and Pleistocene, have all been found here. So it's like, oh, let's play into that by having the creature be from here, which I thought was kind of fun. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like a simple adventure movie, and I guess it is because of the advanced tech with the costume that it really does stand out a lot more than those other cheesy B movies. And because they did, I mean, cutting back and forth from the studio backlot to the actual location, Wakula Springs seems pretty seamless for the most part. It works pretty well, with the exception of the cave, because in the wide shots of the jungle, you never saw any caves anywhere. But I did like that, and then I thought it was funny how quickly they build the cage to lock the kill man in, and it's like they deliberately skip the scene after they hook him to, like, how'd they get him in there? Oh, we don't know. We're not going to show that. It's complicated. Uh,
Well, it was also creative in terms of that powder that they sort of go in to try and suffocate or deoxygenate the water to
mhm.
draw the gill man out. I liked that, and it was a nice sort of way to subdue without killing. And that, yeah, like when it comes to Mark and Dave's competing interests, not just with Kay, but Mark is so much more interested in getting a trophy. Well, he wants to either kill or capture, and it does almost feel like a bit of a King Kong in that aspect too. It's like this is the wonder of the world. We have to take this back. We have all the proof we need. And Dave is like, why don't we get people who know how to do this? We were looking for fossils.
Yeah, and how he's because Mark is also, like you mentioned, antagonistic about Kay, and then even the captain pulls a knife on him at one point.
Yeah.
He's like, actually, Senor, on the water, I am in charge of what we're gonna do, and I say we do what David says and get the hell out of Dodge. And it's like, yeah, he's killed 4 people already. What more do you want?
Yeah, exactly. That is something that I find funny with these is that there is that sort of how many people have to die? How many people have to die before you give up? Want to say hello to Taylor Swift, greater than Disney, Star Wars, and MCU, and Doctor Who. How you doing, Matt G? I'm glad that you and Jill are in the chat together. Fast friends, delightful. But there was what was it? One of the doctors was like the team lead in the time tunnel, I think, which I recognized him from. I checked to see if he had been in Star Trek at all, but no, just the time tunnel. Actually, he was in quite a bit. He was in Soylent Green, but I thought that there was a Trek connection, but there wasn't. And he does something that I thought was rather, for lack of a better term, progressive for the time. Just in terms of having the conversation between him and Kay just before he gets attacked. And Kay is like, I owe David so much. And he's like, no, he helped you with your studies and he got you a job, but you have repaid him many times over. You have value and you don't have to say it's all David. And I was like, wow, capable woman in 1954. Good for you, movie.
Oh yeah, 1954, 70th anniversary this year.
Hey, there we go. We did that on purpose.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it. And by happenstance, according to my Letterboxd diary, I watched this film exactly 7 years ago today, which is a bit surprising. It came out March 5th, 1954 for regional opening. So yeah, because they didn't have big cineplexes back then. But yeah, I guess I'm kind of surprised that the movie has endured as long. It was. I don't remember how I first came to be aware of it. It was like a title almost like you're always familiar with, but I'd never actually seen it. And I always knew what the Gill Man looked like, but I'd never seen the movie. And I didn't actually watch it for the first time all the way through until 7 years ago today. And I thought, oh, that was a fun popcorn movie, but more along the lines of suspense than a scary movie. A little adventure film. Pretty much.
But that's also something like for 1954, doing actual underwater photography would have been a big deal. The suit being as convincing, maybe not the eyes, but even then the eyes were unsettling. So I kind of gave the rest of it a pass, just with all the movement and motion in it, and the fact that he could swim around in that and it looked convincing. Like it does actually look like a fish man, a merman, which they do say. They say merman in the movie, and it made me chuckle.
I wonder if tying the film into the, the actual Amazonian lore about, the Yakaruna has any effect on the film's popularity abroad, since that's kind of what they're doing there. And those underwater scenes probably were, very ahead of their time, because that guy, when Rico Browning went on to do Thunderball, that was in 1965. So this is 11 years ahead of that, but obviously very clear underwater cinematography. Like you can see everything. It's really cool how well and realistic it looks compared to previous efforts.
Well, and that was when we do sort of find the Gill Man's lair. I was like, and I'm glad that you brought up that it is sort of the remnants of that Atlantis or whatever, like underwater society. I do appreciate that. I didn't think about that at the time because I was like, oh no, he's not going to be like, welcome to my home and be like all making hissing noises and stuff. Although some of the sound design when he's actually fighting, it sounds like a wild boar. Like it sounded really threatening and animal-like, which I did appreciate. That added to the dread, if you will, the suspense. But yeah, a lot of the fodder of the people who get killed are mostly natives to the Amazon. I don't think. Right. Oh, Mark dies. Mark does die.
Mark dies, and the doctor gets
gets maimed.
Disfigured, maimed.
But we want Mark to die because he's been shooting harpoons at everybody.
Well, and then one of the other porters on the boat, who was not one of the natives, got killed as well.
Chico, poor Chico.
Okay, yeah, okay. So that happens there, and so it's kind of like in the original Phantom of the Opera, you have a psychopath stalking this girl that wants her to come live with him underground forever. Whereas in this case, the Gillman's not a psychopath because he's being antagonized by everybody else, but he just wants her to come live with him in his lair. But it doesn't have that same evil flair about it, which is evident from the difference in the endings in that in Phantom of the Opera 1925, an angry mob chases him down and lynch mob kills him. Whereas here, David actually stops the captain and Dr. Reno from killing him at the end. I mean, they fire all these gunshots, keep shooting him, and eventually David says, "No, stop." And even though the Gillman has shown repeatedly that he can escape and come back and attack and everything like that, it's like David kind of takes pity on him, and you last see him just kind of disappearing into the water. So I thought that was kind of also refreshing that, it's not just going to be, cheesy monster movie, it's come here to kill us all. Oh, we got to run. It's like, oh, no, he's actually kind of cares for him. So that's different.
Yeah.
It's the monster having a bit of a soul because he's not really a monster per se in the way he's being portrayed. So
I agree, and I do appreciate that is sort of presented through one of the protagonists. Is that it's like we're here as scientists. The creature is more valuable to us alive, so that we can learn stuff about it. And we're not big game hunters. We didn't come here to do this. We didn't expect to find anything. And so, there is that sort of preservationist. Don't kill it. It didn't do anything to us. We're actually the assholes.
I did think it was funny in the beginning also when the doctor finds the fossil that's like completely sticking out of the stone and he starts chopping at the arm. I thought he would shouldn't you be kind of excavating around it to get potentially the rest of the body? Now I'm just going to chop the arm off.
Yeah.
That was funny. But even that was like really creepy when you see the footprints. And talk about the beginning of this movie. Oh, hello, Angry Space Marine Infinity. How it's like very scientific, almost like apocalyptic, the dawn of the universe, and all the creatures coming out of the primordial soup, and with evidence of their comings and their endings and things like that. I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Playing into the idea that it's a missing link between man and fish. So that was something kind of surprising to see at the front of a monster movie, or at least presented in that way. I think you figure in other movies that would be relegated to babble between the scientist characters and really boring dialogue. And instead here they do this really grandiose presentation of the sun and the earth when it's a molten rock and coming into being with these atomic explosions everywhere. I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. I didn't expect that.
Well, and it is sort of like a mesh of evolutionary theory and creation myth, and it does marry them to sort of appease all audience members. If you happen to believe in creation, it's got your side. If you believe in evolution, it's got your side. So it was I thought it was very diplomatic, but a great way to open it. And then also it's one of those older movies where you see the earth from space and it's all cloudy in space and it's just a ball. You don't get to see any definition of continents or anything like that. But it's always, I enjoy seeing any of those before man actually had an opportunity to see the earth. Jill says, I only saw the one in which he was killed. I didn't realize there was a better ending. Well,
I assume she's talking about the original because I didn't get the impression that he died because he got shot several times. David says, stop shooting, don't shoot him anymore. And he kind of just walks back into the lagoon and, falls into the water, almost like he disappears. And as we know, the sequel is called Revenge of the Creature, so he lived.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third one, The Creature Walks Among Us. I haven't seen the sequel, so I don't know how the continuity between the second and the third film is. I assume it's the same continuity. But, I always got the impression that he survived and was just a bit maimed at the end and injured enough that he wasn't going to be able to be a problem to them anymore. Because I assume, Jill, if you tell us in the comments when you say the movie, I assume you're talking about the same movie where they're in the Amazon and the boat named Rita, and they're trying to get out of the lagoon and killing all the poor. Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. So I just got the impression that he didn't actually die in the end.
Yeah, and it's funny for me because I'm expecting, again, looking at it through sort of a prism of modern movies where there's sequel bait, and when he gets shot and then goes into the lagoon again, and he sort of swims away, and then he becomes still, and then sort of just drifts behind like a rock or something. And it's like, oh, I wonder if he died. And then I did find out that there are sequels, and I was like, I guess not. But it was interesting that there was a possibility of the creature coming back.
Yes, and Jill follows up saying, "Oh, there's a sequel. Yes, there's two sequels. So this is from 1954, and then you had Revenge of the Creature in 1955, and then The Creature Walks Among Us in 1956. So yes, they had three films in this series. Says, yes, I thought that he was shot too many times to survive. I didn't know. Now I'm going to answer this question right now. I'm going to look at the spoiler summary and see what the beginning of part two, how Revenge of the Creature actually starts, to get an idea. See, because I assume Revenge of the Creature is like literally supposed to be the same creature.
Or maybe from the same, maybe there was another one.
Yeah, that's true as well.
There's a school of Gilman.
The sequel was also in 3D. Clint Eastwood appeared in that film. It says his film debut, but I thought his film debut was Tarantula, but maybe they both came out at the same time. Let's see. Yes, it says, having previously survived being riddled with bullets, the Gillman is captured and sent to the Ocean Harbor, Oceanium, and Florida. Yeah, so he did survive being shot in the first film.
So it's like Jaws 3D. The second one takes place at Marineland.
Yeah, like an Oceanographic Institute. It's totally the same plot as Jaws 3D, and it even was in 3D. But unlike Jaws 3D, which is just awful, Revenge of the Creature got some pretty decent reviews. People liked it enough that it merited a third movie, just the very next year. There have been canceled remakes over the years. Apparently, the latest news is that James Wan is attached to a remake. So that could be interesting to see what he does with that. Because I remember how excited people were when DC announced they were going to do a spin-off of Aquaman called The Trench, because the creatures that came out of the trench were clearly inspired by the Gillman and designed just nightmare fuel versions of that. So like, man, if he does that as like a remake of Creatures from the Black Lagoon, assuming it's not a straight up remake, that he does something different with it, that could be really cool.
Yeah. Well, and it would be, and it's not like Universal has been shy about trying to bring back the Universal monsters. It would be interesting, and maybe that would be like, because this is, I think, chronologically, out of all the movies that we're going to go through on this show, what is this one called? Right, Ghouls, Ghosts, and Goblins. Out of all of them, this is the last one chronologically, and I think it would be good if they could bring back and do a remake and reintroduce Gilman, not in a romantic way.
Yeah.
Aside from Guillermo del Toro's interesting twist that was taken on that, but I would love to see it actually be more of a straight up horror movie for a modern era.
Yeah, and it's funny that del Toro framed it the way he did, because it's like, again, the humans were the antagonists in the original film as well. And I guess he just wanted to overemphasize that more in The Shape. I mean, granted, The Shape of Water is an excellent movie. And then The Creature Walks Among Us is set in the Everglades. So it's like, we use the Everglades and stuff to film, to as a substitute for Amazonia in the first one, and now we're going back there, but this time it's going to be itself the Everglades for the third
one. Well, that was something that I found a little throwing caution to the wind, in terms of they're going down the Amazon, then they're seeing alligators all over the place, but they're going for swims and they're hanging out. Even the captain of the ship is like, every animal is a killer. They're talking about how centipedes grow to be like a foot long, and
well, that's why he yells at Kay when he sees her swimming in the water. He's like, "No, get back to the boat. It's dangerous. You're too far away."
Yeah, well, and it's like, well, does it matter if you're in the close to the boat? You're still going to be taken under by an alligator.
That's true.
Affinity says, boy, Scotty's been hitting those smokes pretty heavy of late, huh? Yeah, that we're, yeah.
Like they first suspected that a jaguar had killed the two workers, and it's funny that that the doctor actually left those same porters at the campsite in that measly little tent while he goes all the way back to California, or Florida, or wherever he went to go to the institute to find more funds and people to come with him. And it's like, so those guys just stayed in that tent the entire time you were gone.
Yeah, they're just hanging out. Well, I guess someone had to guard the site.
Well, I mean, I figured that maybe they could have put a marker there to remember where it was, and draw themselves a map and then take the fossil back with them. But why leave guarding it from who exactly? Because it seems like it's way out in the middle of nowhere. I just thought it was funny. This guy goes all the way back to the States while these people are supposed to be deep in the jungles of Amazonia, just at this little measly tent.
I thought he goes to Brazil.
Oh, you're right. It is Brazil. Never mind. But it's still a ways back.
It's still a ways away.
Yeah, so back to civilization. But that was I thought that was kind of funny. You guys wait here while I go back and get a hot meal and a nice warm bed and all that kind of stuff, and get rejuvenated and find other people for you to serve. But then they get killed.
But it is like it's not just this straight up, we found this, let's continue down river. Like there is, I do like the gathering of the exhibition crew, getting the ship, finding out everybody's character traits and figuring out who's on whose side, who's more reasonable, who's the showboat. I liked it. I like the characters are okay, but again, it's just, as you said, it's a popcorn movie. It's fairly straightforward. Yeah. And I'm curious to see about the Revenge of the Creature and The Creature Walks Among Us, as it goes with most of these Universal movies and their subsequent sequels. But this is one that I think would be, I don't know. We'll learn more next week when we do Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and see how those sort of lead into one another. But I would be, again, curious to find out about the future of the Gill Man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. I think that there was a rights issue because all these guys showed up in Monster Squad, one of my favorite childhood Halloween movies.
I think it was Monster Squad. And that was the last time he's been seen in a movie.
Yes, and they could only do it.
That was the 80s.
Yeah, and they could only have him in there briefly, and they wanted him to be more, but it was something, there was like a rights issue or something, which I don't understand because there was all Universal, but I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's definitely coming up on my Halloween watch list as we are in the spooky season.
That's true. This movie was, it's iconic, the underwater sequences, how they actually set the guy on fire in the costume and he dives off the boat. Yeah. That was probably pretty rad for people to see back then. It's a fun movie, but almost like the wolf, like you mentioned, it's a bit more straightforward than say the Wolfman, where you had this odd protagonist and then all those things we're talking about here. Here it's like, you mentioned the two guys competing for the girl and competing for their different, one wants a trophy, the other just is in it for the science, and the captain and the doctor, all those people. So it is very much more an ensemble, because this is one of the few movies where the monster isn't. It's kind of shot a bit from the creature's perspective for a bit, like when he's reaching his hands out and watching her when they're swimming. So you're getting the very voyeuristic sense that you're stalking these people too.
Yes. Well, and it is a nice progression in terms of the reveal of the creature. You start, as you mentioned, with like the hand creeping up, and then you get to see him underwater. But then when he does reveal himself on land and on the deck of the ship, there are other shots that you wouldn't necessarily see. Like you get to see his feet / flippers, and the functionality of the suit itself, to be able to see it moving and swimming, and it is believable. And having the person in the suit basically hold their breath for 4 minutes at a time, because they decided that there wouldn't be any air escaping from under what would be that mask or helmet or what have you, because it would all just be going through the gills. And so you can't have air bubbles. But apparently that's something that they sort of loosened up on as the sequels went on, so that people were, allowed to breathe. But yeah.
I like when you see the shot through the porthole when he's they're all talking downstairs and you see his legs, he's walking on the deck of the ship.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to notice that he's there.
And again, Universal had a great way of casting their female leads, their heroines. But Julie Adams, again, hubba hubba. Like, good work. If I were the guild man, I would also be smitten. I did appreciate it. And apparently she passed away in 2019 at the age of 92.
Yeah, she was one of the longest serving, and another person associated with also died last year. She had an underwater double as well for the scenes of her swimming underwater, and her double died last year.
Oh.
Who I think was the last surviving person from that cast. And then I think the guild man Rico only died last year, 2 years ago as well, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. I think he died. February 27th, 2023. So he was around a long time.
Wow.
It was 90s. Well, so whereas the other lead actor on.
Yes, yeah, but I do sort of. When people are complaining about modern film and saying that there's nothing good coming out, it's nice to be able to go back and watch movies like this and the classic Universal movies, and even with like the classic Bond movies. I like going back into classic Hollywood stuff and knowing that art sort of carries on and survives, as I mentioned off the top, with the makers of the film being grateful to the fans for keeping it alive and their memories alive. And so I don't like to say rest in peace, but well earned, and thank you for providing this for so many people.
Yes, let me double check who directed this film. Actually, I keep forgetting because it didn't exactly. So Jack Arnold. Okay, so what else he did? He also made It Came from Outer Space, Tarantula.
Oh.
The Incredible Shrinking Man. So that's something else there. Let me see, creature.
I'm wondering. It Came from Outer Space. That's not a. It was written by Ray Bradbury, but I was just curious if that was a Harryhausen flick.
Okay, so yeah, Revenge of the Creature was Clint Eastwood's first movie because Tarantula came out later that same year. So.
That's. But apparently the director of this directed the lion's share of the Brady Bunch television show.
Ah, interesting.
So versatile director. But yeah. That's funny. I just got the notification from IMDb and it says, how would you rate The Creature from the Black Lagoon? And I'm like, don't get ahead of me, IMDb. So Kat, how would you rate?
I give it like a 7. I think it's a fun movie. I like it. Fun adventure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we gave The Wolfman 6.
Yeah.
And I do like this better than I like The Wolfman, just in terms of story and more colorful characters. Plus,
and you get a lot more of the monster too.
And you get a lot more of the monster as well. But that was by virtue of The Wolfman being a question as to whether or not it was psychological and not an actual physical transformation. But then they went with physical transformation. So yeah, you kind of have to have the creature from the Black Lagoon be a creature from the Black Lagoon. But I think it's impressive for its time. I don't think it overstays its welcome. The characters are great. The adventure is okay. There is that sense of dread underwater.
And it's often cited, even though Universal made plenty of other monster movies after this, it's often cited as one of the last of the classic, iconic monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it made an appearance in, let's see, what else did it make an appearance in? It made, let's see, where is the Gill Man? Let's see here. Let me go Browning, Gill Man. See, he also appeared in a stop-motion animated film called Mad Monster Party in 1967, and then in another animated film in 1972, Mad, Mad, Mad Monsters. He made an appearance in The Munsters in 1965, a stage show in 2009 in The Shape of Water, and so yeah, he's been around for quite a while. I'm pretty sure he was in a I don't know if it was Abbott and Costello. What was it? I can't find it. So.
Oh, is that it? Like Abbott and Costello meet meet Frankenstein, because they all usually, there were a bunch of those. Maybe not a bunch, but there were Abbott and Costello movies where there were the Universal movie monsters, and it was basically.
He appeared in Abbott and Costello on an episode of the Colgate Comedy Hour, aired prior to the first film's release. It's commonly known now as Abbott and Costello Meet the Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Okay.
But it is an episode of television. So that's surprising that they would air that before the release of the original movie, because it's like, well, the original movie is where he's going to shine.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Now, next week is obviously Halloween. And we are going to be doing a double feature for Halloween. Or did you say that you were trying to figure out whether or not you had better things to do?
I should be here on Halloween. I'll say that for now. So
sounds good. I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. Hopefully Steve will be joining us, but we're going to be doing the double feature of Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. And that is something I'm looking forward to, just because these Universal movies, aside from like when I got the Blu-ray box set, the first one I popped in was The Invisible Man, and then I hadn't seen any of the other ones. And so it's been really, really good going through these. And next week's going to be no different. It's going to be my first time seeing the original Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein.
I can't believe
I am.
Films.
Yeah. And then you have been talking with Ernesto about the Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like something that I should investigate a little harder, because you guys have been giving it pretty decent reviews.
Oh, yeah, we like it.
Yeah. And I've been hearing other places that it's like you're looking at the two best actors at the Emmys for this year.
Mm.
So that looks like something worth investigating. Although, you know me, I can't help but poo-poo something if it's like, if this is a Batman show, where's Batman? So I'll set that prejudice aside.
Well,
but
so there's November 10th, so then you could binge like all 10 or something.
Yeah.
For all.
Well, we'll see. I gotta figure out my HBO Max or whatever it's on. But yeah. I've been hearing nothing but good things with that, and so a lot of good stuff coming up. And then I don't know if you're going to be able to make it, but over on Anti-Derivative Jill's channel, we've been talking Harry Potter, and so tomorrow we're doing Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 as we wind that down. And yeah. So there's and also Cinema Gulp, as always. We've been doing the Wednesday Hump Day Happy Hour, and Ben's been doing his Halloween mixer for the spooky season, which is great. But yeah.
And yeah. And I might do a stream for Nightmare on Elm Street's 40th anniversary on November 9th.
Nice.
I might do that. Yeah, maybe we'll have a special guest. Because last time, for those who don't know, on the Texas Chainsaw one, we had a special guest, Robert Meyer Burnett, joined us for quite a while, about 20 minutes in, and stayed for almost 2 hours. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was great.
So yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll maybe I'll do it because it's a Saturday, so I'll have plenty of time in the day or whatever to do a quick stream or whatever. So yeah, it could be fun.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to join for that one. I had an opportunity to talk about that one with Ben.
Forgot. I should have shown this off. My steelbook of Creature from the Black Lagoon. Alex
Yes.
Ross, of course, inspired by the Jaws poster. Except I think this looks a lot cooler than the Jaws poster because it's just he's reaching up out of all the all the kelp of the cave about to get her, and because in the drawing she looks so much closer to the creature, whereas in the Jaws poster it's almost like a bit of a forced perspective where the shark's like in your face and it seems like she's so far away that it's like, oh, it doesn't seem that dangerous yet. But this seems a lot more. A really cool cover for that.
Well, and that,
yeah,
like that part of the performance as well, even when they were underwater, in terms of the furtive movements to being like going to grab at her legs but not wanting to scare her away. I thought it was an interesting. It is both scary and sensual, but that's a lot of the Universal stuff, especially with Dracula and there is that. I don't want to say stalkerish, but certainly an amorous antagonist who wants the female lead, and so I do like that with the damsel, especially because they've all been lookers. So
and keep your eyes peeled. In December, we might renew this series briefly for Nosferatu, which is coming soon.
How long is Nosferatu? Oh no, the new Nosferatu.
It comes out Christmas Day, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Huh. Which is surprising release day. I'm like, really? Okay.
Number one movie going day of the year, from what I understand.
I've heard that too. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've gone, but it used to be a tradition for me and my sister before she got married. We would go and check out movies on Christmas Day. Once Christmas dinner is done, get away from the family, smoke a J, see a movie. It was great.
Fun.
Yeah. So I do want to, as I said, just because of the straightforward nature of this particular movie, I would recommend it. 7 out of 10. But yeah, I would give it a go. But it is so straightforward. There's not a whole heck of a lot to sort of debate over. But I appreciate that you like it. We've been pretty much on par with what we've been
for this whole series. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks to the chat.
Absolutely. Great to see Jill and Matt G and Affinity. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate your support. Don't forget to hit the like, the subscribe. I know you guys are all subscribed. Share if you wish. This is probably a good broadcast to mow along or do some treadmilling to. Wherever you enjoy listening to us talk, please recommend it to other people who might enjoy listening to us talk. Ooh, and Jill gives us a smile.
Well, good. You could see it because I can't see it on my end.
But thank you again, guys. And we will see you next week for the Halloween Frankenstein double feature. Thanks again, Kat. I'll see you soon.
See ya.